Okay, so this presentation is relevant to anybody. So if you are about to apply for graduate roles, if you are looking for part-time jobs, if you're just getting started and you're in first or second year and you're thinking about the kind of skills that employers might want, it's going to be relevant to everybody. So what we want to do in this session is talk about what skills employers want, talk about how you can demonstrate your skills to employers, and some suggestions for if you don't think that you've got the skills that employers are wanting you to be able to provide. So this slide shows the results of a survey that was done by the Institute of Student Employers, and they asked different employers what were the skills that they wanted in graduates, and they wanted the top skills. So anybody giving a list of skills that they want from graduates could give probably a list of 100 different things, but they wanted to just concentrate on the key things. And they also asked them, what are the skills that you think graduates need to provide that they don't necessarily have? And the ones that came out top were resilience, dealing with conflict, and self-awareness. So I think it's worth just concentrating on these three areas a little bit and talking about those so you've got an awareness. So within any workplace, resilience is really important because you need to be able to bounce back when things go wrong. So things will go wrong, no matter how well things are planned or how good you are at your job, things will happen. So it could be that colleagues ring in sick and you need to cover for them. It could be that IT doesn't work. It could be that customers aren't happy. All kinds of things can happen in a workplace that would go wrong. So they need to know that rather than that being a barrier to people getting on with the work, that employees are able to bounce back, think about a different way of approaching things, maybe go, oh, well, that's annoying, but then get on with it, and be resilient and still have the outcomes that they want. So resilience is really important. Dealing with conflict, well, the little picture maybe isn't the best way of dealing with conflict, obviously, but conflict will happen. So it could be conflict between different people in a workplace. It could be that they want to do things in different ways. It could be that they just don't naturally get on with each other. So being able to deal with conflict and still work with everybody that you've got to work with in a workplace and overcome issues is really important. And self-awareness isn't kind of about deep, meaningful stuff necessarily. It's just about very quite simple things like knowing what you're good at, knowing what you need to develop, knowing the skills that you find most difficult, knowing yourself and when you perform better at different times of day, knowing that you might react differently to stress to other people in a workplace and being able to manage that. So being aware of your strengths, your weaknesses, and how you work is really important as well. Some of the others in the list are really important and quite obvious. So leadership. Leadership's not always telling people what to do, remember. It's just getting the best out of people and encouraging them to follow you as well as bossing them about. Time management, presentation skills. You get a chance to develop those lots while you're doing a degree. Responsibility, accountability. Also get a chance to do that while you're doing your degree, and problem solving. Commercial awareness is about knowing what's going on in that particular industry, knowing what the risks are, knowing what the successes are, knowing who the competitors may be, knowing generally what's going on in that area. A couple of other things. Emotional intelligence is about understanding your own response. So kind of knowing the things that are going to wind you up really and being able to deal with that. So, for example, it could be that within a workplace, if other people make mistakes, that could be something that really winds you up. So you've got to be kind of own that and recognise that naturally that's something that would kind of push your buttons, but you need to make sure that you manage that and deal with it effectively and professionally. So these are the things that came out in this particular survey. But there are different lists that we see all the time in different places. And if you are doing applications, a really good list to look at is the one on Career Edge. And if you go into the red bar on the top and go into advice and written advice and self-development, you get a PDF list of employability skills. And there's just a little section that you can see there. The list itself it's too long to put onto here, onto a PowerPoint slide on webinars. You just wouldn't see it. But you can go into Career Edge and have a look for that. And I like that list because it's quite short, so it's easy to manage, and it gives you examples. So it explains really concisely what it is that employers mean by those particular skills. So if there's anything that you're not sure about, have a look in there and it'll give you some ideas. And some other good places to look at definitions of employability skills are on Target Jobs. There's a really good list of skills and competencies that's quite detailed in there. So if you know you've got more time and you want to do things more thoroughly than just using the quick list on Career Edge, have a look on Target Jobs for those skills and competencies on there. Or on Prospects, there's a whole section on what employers want as well that's quite detailed. And if you want to look at the kind of skills that you're getting from your degree, if you go into the What Can I Do With My Degree section on Prospects, as well as giving you ideas of what you can do with a degree, there's a list of skills that typically you would develop those skills as part of studying that kind of degree. So there are transferable skills that you would get more in some degrees than others. So for example, it could be that you do lots of presentations in a particular degree and lots of group work. So you're getting communication skills, presentation skills, and teamwork skills from those. It could be that you do a lot of data analysis, so you get more of those kind of skills. So it can vary from degree to degree, but there's often a lot of crossover between transferable skills. And the skills required are likely to change. So they're very different to the skills that were needed maybe 20, 30 years ago, and they're likely to change in the future. I would think some skills are always needed, like communication and so on. But this report, which was produced by an organisation called Nesta, which looks at what's likely to happen in the future, came up with a list of skills that are likely to be needed in the next 10 years. So by 2030, they think they're going to need more emphasis on particular in-person and interpersonal skills, such as teaching other people things, not necessarily all being teachers, but being able to impart knowledge and tell people and, empower other people to have that knowledge as well. Social effectiveness and coordination and social skills are going to be really, really important. They're important now, obviously, but they think they'll be even more key in the future. Higher order cognitive skills, so real high level thinking skills they're talking about. So things like being original, being able to be very fluent with ideas and actively learn. So be able to come up with ideas about something that you're only just learning about yourself, really. I feel a bit like that doing these webinars, to be honest, because they're quite new to us. System skills like understanding connections with things, looking at different sort of technical systems, making decisions on that, evaluating things. So if you are interested in looking at the full report, it's freely available online, and it's nesta.org, and you can look for that Future of Skills and Employment 2030 document. So the key thing is not to really be aiming at these skills now necessarily, but be aware that the skills that you are providing to employers now are likely to change within your job and within future jobs that you apply for. If you're applying for a particular vacancy, it's important to look at what that particular employer has said that they want for that particular job as well. So often they'll have a job description and a person specification for a particular job. So the employer will decide what they want in that particular role. And often the same skills come up again and again, like communication, teamwork, time management, and so on, things like that. But then they'll decide what else they want for that particular job. So it's really, really important that as well as having an awareness of the general skills that employers are wanting, that you look in detail if there is a vacancy to see what the employer is saying they want. Now, sometimes they'll provide this in a really useful format and actually have an attachment or a title that says job description and person specification. Sometimes they'll just sort of say, this is what we're looking for. Sometimes they'll say, what you'll be doing is this, the key person will do this, and they'll kind of hide it within the vacancy information somewhere. But however they provide it, whatever they do, make sure you find it if you're applying for a particular job, and then you can tailor your application or CV to be reflecting those particular skills and requirements that they want in that job. So it's no good providing something to an employer that says, well, this is everything I can offer, and somewhere within all that is the stuff that you want. Make it easy for them to find the things that they're interested in when you're doing your application. And that can really make a big difference between you being successful or not in getting through to interview stage. So although it's useful to have an overall awareness of all these different employability skills, make sure you spend some time looking in detail at what that individual employer wants if you're applying for a particular vacancy. If they don't seem to have actually provided much information about what they want, you can refer back to the job profiles on prospects. So just as an example, I picked this one out, which is a social media manager. And you have to scroll down a little bit of this job profiles, but there's over 400 job profiles on here. So there's likely to be something similar to what the job is you're applying for if they don't have much information. Or you can use this as well if you're doing a speculative application. So, or if you're just preparing your CV ready. So if you want to have a CV ready for a certain type of job, look at the list of skills in here for the sort of job you're interested in, and then you can have something ready that's likely to suit what that employer wants. But obviously double check it against their particular requirements once you actually go to do the application. So I know that everybody watching this won't necessarily want to be social media managers, but I just picked this because it's something that's quite flexible that could appeal to people from lots of different degrees. And again, in here, if you just have a little look at the bullet points, the first ones, understanding social media platforms, editing and writing skills, knowledge of algorithms relating to search engines, are all things that are very specific to this particular job. But then the ones lower down, being creative, new ideas, communication skills, organisation, prioritising, working under pressure, are all very much transferable skills. So this is why students from different degrees can actually be successful in different fields, because you've got a good set of skills that you can take into other things sometimes. So how are you going to get this across to employers really well? So you may have seen this before. I know quite a few employability modules on degrees use this, but a really good way to talk through your skills is to use the STAR acronym. So it's just the first letter of each title, really. So S stands for situation, where you explain the context and describe the situation. And be really careful in this, because if it's something that's only relevant to UCLan and you're telling somebody outside, they might not understand what it is. So don't use acronyms. Don't say, oh, I'm a student ambassador, and assume they'll know what that means. I once read somebody's application, and they were talking about working in Smiggle, which is a stationery shop, which I'd never heard of. So obviously quantify it if it's not a everyday brand name that everybody would know about. So just describing as much detail as required. Say what the task is. What were you trying to do? Action is what did you do specifically? So this will probably be the biggest part of your answer, and you'll be explaining this in a bit more detail. And then R is the result. So say what happened. So hopefully you can pick something that worked well. Or you can say what worked well even if it wasn't as successful as it could be. Also include what did you learn from it. So going back to what we were saying before about resilient employees, it's useful for employers to know that you can learn from whatever you do. And if it doesn't go well, you'll bounce back, you'll do it better next time. Obviously, they'd want you to be aiming for things to go well, but in the real world, it doesn't always work out exactly right every time. And there's a good article on this on the Guardian website. So I put the link in there, but if you just went on Guardian Star, and there's a few others around to give you some examples. So if you use Star, it just gives you that structure to get across what it is you might want to say to employers effectively. And you can use it both in applications and in interviews as well. So if you don't have an example to talk about relating to a particular competency that an employer is wanting, what are you going to do? So I'm just going to bring the chat box back, and then you can tell me which letter you think if you want to take part. So A, ignore it. B, make something up. C, talk about the same thing in a different context. Thanks, Lynn. Or say how you could learn to do it, or something else. So if you want, just have a bash, A, B, C, D, or E. See what you think. I'll give you a couple of minutes if you want to take part. Okay, I've got a couple of C's. An E. Any last contributions? Okay, we'll go with those then. Thank you for that. So, nobody went for A or B, which is good. So if you were just to ignore it, what you've got to imagine is when you do an application, the person looking through the applications will actually be trying to tick off to say you've got all the things that are in their job description. So if you just ignore it and don't say anything about it, then they won't be able to tick you anything off for that. So you've just lost an opportunity. So I wouldn't suggest you just ignore it. B, that could get you into all sorts of trouble. I have heard about instances of people not only being sacked, but being taken to court for committing fraud when they've got a job based on something they've made up on application forms. So really not a good idea to make anything up. If you get found out, you could be in serious trouble, and people do get found out. So C is a really good idea. Well done those people who put C. You can talk about the same thing in a different context or at a different level. So it could be that you've had chance to have a leadership role as part of a student activity, but you haven't done it in a workplace. But that's still going to be relevant to tell the employer. Also, D is a good idea. So if you haven't done something before, you could say how you could learn to do it or how you would approach it. And rather than saying, I can already do all these things, it's not always the case that an employer is looking for somebody who's the finished article. They might be quite happy for somebody to be wanting to learn how to do something. So to say you're going to learn how to do it and find out a little bit about it to make it plausible could be really useful. Something else, if it works and it's genuine and you think the employer might like it, that's up to you. But I think C and D are the things to stick with, really. So a couple of examples here if you've got no example. So explain how you do it and show that you're capable. So for example, the XPO client database software, which is something I've just made up, would be new to me, but I've used other client databases and I know I'm quick to learn the basics of a new system. That could be something you could put to say, I can't do this one yet, but I know I could learn to do it. Or sometimes a lot of students ask for help with how to talk about answering the phone if that's part of their job, if they've not done that professionally before. So a good way of doing that would be to say answering queries by telephone would be new, but then you tell them how you would approach it. So I would make sure I answered in a clear manner, listened carefully, not anything I need to remember, and took extra care to ensure my tone of voice and language was welcoming and clear. because obviously on the phone you can't see your face, you can't see that you're smiling, so it's got to come across even more obviously in your voice. So 2 examples of saying how you could approach an application if you haven't actually done those things before. And something else to be aware of is you could always actually do a little bit of learning yourself. So this isn't going to be feasible maybe if you see an application, they want you to fill it in, you've only got limited time to do it and there's a deadline. I'm not suggesting for a minute that you start to try to learn lots of things and then put it on an application form. That's probably not going to be worth trying to do. It's just too much to fit into that time. But if you're applying for roles and you keep seeing again and again that the same things keep coming up and it's something that you think you can't offer, it might be worth getting a flavour of it through some online learning. So 2 good sources of online learning are the career e-learning section that's on Career Edge, and the box there under homepage gives you some of the ideas. So things like working as a manager, working as a leader, dealing with challenge and change, some business skills, IT skills. There's things like project management, marketing strategies, managing meetings, taking minutes for meetings, all sorts of different things in there. Kind of useful if you're going on placements as well, so you've got some feel of what to expect in a business place. And the other place to look is LinkedIn Learning. Now, LinkedIn Learning has got learning on all kinds of different things, so you could explore loads more areas on there. And then again, don't try to make it something huge that's a substitute for a degree or, years worth of experience. That's not going to work. But it could just give you a flavour and a starting point to say, I've already looked into this, I've learned a bit about it, and I'm ready to build on that in the workplace. The other good thing about LinkedIn Learning is that you can then get that learning put onto your LinkedIn profile. So if you do some learning through LinkedIn, that automatically gets put onto your profile so employers can see what you've been doing and that you've been taking responsibility and recognising what it is that you need to learn, and you've been actively doing that. So again, that comes back to self-awareness, it comes back to resilience, comes back to taking responsibility, all those employability skills that employers like to see. For UCLan students, if you go onto UCLan and LinkedIn Learning, there's a link on the general UCLan area. You can access LinkedIn Learning for free. So please just remember that, because if you just Google LinkedIn Learning, you'll end up in the area that you have to pay for that. But as a student at UCLan, if you access it through our area, you can get it for free. The other way to get expertise, it's changed that a little bit, it looked better on my slides before, but the other way is to get into entry-level jobs to gain some experience. So it could be that you do part-time work already, that gives you lots of skills to take into graduate level jobs or placement level jobs, or it could be that if there's something that you see is missing from what they're wanting to get into those graduate roles, then it could be something to think about doing in a different way. So one example I can think of is often HR roles, they are keen for people to have some office administration experience as part of the starting point to getting into a sort of HR entry level role sometimes. So I've known students in the past do maybe temping work or do temporary jobs as office administrators just to get that expertise to then help them to then have that stepping stone to get into the HR roles. It's not always necessary, but it's something that I've known quite a few people do in the past. So to summarise then, be really clear on what skills a particular employer might want and be really clear on what those actually mean. Demonstrate clearly using examples, and you can talk about those examples using STAR, situation, task, action, result. And be aware that the skill requirements can change from employer to employer over time. Employer to employer and over time. So be prepared to learn new skills and be ready to sort of learn either through work or through your course and over time in your career as well, because they do change. So be aware that we offer all of our usual services, even though this is currently being recorded during lockdown and all our services have gone remotely, we are still offering all the same things. So please don't think that it's any extra trouble or anything. All the career staff are sitting at home, online, ready to go. We're still doing all our one-to-one appointments. All the online services are there. And if you want to speak to somebody directly, you can still ring us. So the phone numbers are all set up, the emails being listened to as well. So please do keep using us. We're there for you. And I'm going to stop the recording now and get some feedback for you. If you're watching this on the recording, you're welcome to just send us some feedback directly on any of the webinars. And thank you for looking to the recording. Those people who are listening live, please stay online while I just stop recording.